Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. I tell you that ego is just, oh my goodness, ego. Oh, people that just let it run wild in the world today. No one is working on controlling their ego. In fact, there's this thing called death of an ego. And I have the perfect two people here to discuss the death of an ego and what it really means. Shadow Fox, Lee Two Hawks, hello, hello, hello.
Hello. Hey, yeah, this is the flow. And it's like we're gonna step into the flow a little bit here.
Yes.
Um, and again, we've been many people have been speaking about it. I've been hearing a lot of feedback about, oh, meditation, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, the death of the ego, so on and so forth. Um, and so what I'd like to do is just like um, let be a little cognizant and take some accountability for the terminology and the words that we use and we bring forward. And I really do not know who the first person was, the genius person that decided that death of an ego would be a really good thing. Um, so I mean, I mean, it's a catchy phrase. Okay, it does get people's attention. Um, but yeah, let's be a little accountable for what we're really bringing forward and what we truly do mean. Because this is, when we're looking at ego in any capacity, is it not just that filter? And it's like, are we going to lie to ourselves? We're going to, you know, choose everybody else to validate ourselves for us. All of these little mechanisms we're going to kind of talk about. Um, and so I would like to turn it over to Lee Two Hawks. But yeah, let's really start um, taking a look and being a little more accountable for the terminology we're bringing forth because there's so much misinformation out there, and this is how um, people in certain capacities can be led astray. I think so. I'll put it.
Paul and I had a discussion 10 minutes before coming online here, and I wish we really recorded it because it's very, very good. It virtually had all the internal elements of what we should be talking about, or can talk about, etc., etc. And my point, I guess, in my being here in this particular session is to say, and and lessen the energy of the phrase. Was it death of the ego?
Yeah.
Really? There is no death of the ego. If you had death of the ego, you'd be dead. At least at that point, because beyond that is something else. But we have to recognize that we can use that phrase to say, I take no accountability because I'm dead. My ego's gone. I have no response. I don't know why I picked my nose on the plane. I don't know. Oh my, it must have been oh, that's right. I don't have an ego anymore. Therefore, I'm not responsible for it.
You know, when you think about it, Paul, really, our ego really was, even in childhood, is what, helped us survive. Even the teenage years, like, whoa, these were, through the traumas and dramas and, the crises that we all went through, and even our children now will have to go through, right? Um,
Yes.
and so our ego, it serves us in certain capacities. But what we're going to speak about a little bit is, we do have like the God complex. Think about, some doctor that thinks he's, the greatest thing since sliced bread, or a male counterpart is like, I'm the best things for women. It's that it goes beyond being conceited. Okay. Um,
That
but
would be an out of control ego.
yeah, exactly. So, would you kind of talk about that? Because when we're looking at that, the death of an ego, it really is a blending. It is a blending, and it's coming together of um, the the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and the astral body, and it really is the unification. And the ego is in there. let me turn it over to Lee Tuhawk so he can discuss it a little bit better. I really wish we would have recorded that. You know,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Okay. All right. I'm going ahead.
Mhm.
Here we go. Oh, there we go. Uh, we have to realize that the ego is a construct. A lot of this came from Freud, and bless his heart for doing what he did in the 1920s. However, it just became overboard with further psychiatrists and psychologists, etc., etc. Ego is that centralization of all we have become since childhood by culture, by religion, by parental, all this and that, through what's that called, where you have peer pressure,
Familiar.
all that creates an entity that we can call ego. However, I would argue that that is not ego. I would say that that is a mask to wear. The inner ego is that entity which says, I resist, or I'm going to change,
Or conform.
or conform, yes. But then again, the ego is protective of the individual.
Yeah.
So it's protective. It's not going to say, I conform to this particular whatever it is.
Okay.
It can, yes. But then that goes back to peer pressure, goes back to religion, goes back to parental training, go back to the schooling and all of that.
Okay.
So the ego is a hidden aspect I would present. And what she said about blending goes into a deeper sphere of things. We as individuals have four bodies. One is the physical etheric. There are two components. Without the etheric, you cannot have the physical, period. Then we have the astral, or what's called the emotional realm. Then we have the mental, which has two major aspects, higher and lower mental. Then, of course, off to the side, we have the soul. All right. And beyond that is much more, but it doesn't mean
Right.
anything in this particular conversation.
So it's that infusion.
What happens, yes, I was getting to
Okay.
that point. Thank you very much. There, there has to be that. I wanted to present the aspects of it so that they understood what I'm saying about blending. All those three bodies at one time become what's called an individualized sense of self, which is necessarily more or less the ego, because the ego is influenced by the upper bodies, the astral and the mental. That's what I mean by not everything here on earth plane, culture, religion, etc., is affecting ego. So when we blend those aspects together, we have an aligned personality, which means that all of them are working together to create a more realized individual on the earth plane.
So when you take a look and you say like there's no I in team, this is another analogy perhaps for recognizing that when we're looking at ego and people are speaking about the death of the ego, it's like no, it's actually the blending and the harmonizing of that so that it's like equal parts and they're not out of balance. Like we don't have this super, super, super ego of, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread.
You're not overly emotional.
Right.
Your cheetah of the brain is not so effective because you have control of your mental aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I would also like to explain while I have a moment here is that in the culture I've been trained on, the soul itself is a capital ego, ego, which means there are virtually two aspects. One of the soul's aspect is to create the consciousness for the human form on earth. That is your consciousness aspect. That is the ego working with the human form in the physical plane. The other aspect of the soul, which to me is more critically important, is its spiritual aspect of reaching upward into its place of birth, into that aspect, which is what we call a monad. And so it's constantly reaching out to that as well as applying information to that. At the same time, it's doing its own job on the soul plane until the integrated personalities say, hey, let's get together. Let's have some fun.
You know, when we were talking behind in the green room, and what? Well, no, we were talking behind. We were in the
I
green
know,
room before we.
I know. I was in theater, so.
Okay. So anyway, now that I've lost my train of thought, thank you very much. No, Willie, what was I?
Willie.
The we can take a look and we like our evolution. Okay, so like even as a child, you know, our ego served us in certain capacities, whether it gave us strength or courage
It's a
or
survival mechanism.
exactly. And so many times I'll speak a little bit about, you know, our evolution as spiritual beings. And Lee Two Hawks is uh, brought into like the next component of that, which is what unfoldment.
Unfoldment. Yes.
Unfoldment. And so when you think about it, even like with a lotus, okay, it unfolds and it opens. And what happens? Many people are talking about ascension and or expansion of consciousness. I mean, there's so many different units for describing this. And so when we look at that unfoldment, it is no different than with that ego, that it is open to be receptive, to be able to be of service in um, a healthy way, right?
Yeah, a way that is of service to others.
Right, because we can take a look and say ascension and everything, but you know, I think that our human construct, which is also regulated through our ego, that we limit ourselves because you know what is ascension? What is the openness? What does that have to do with ego? And when we're talking about the death of stifling, the greatest thing that holds us back in any movement is that of fear. Fear, my brother would say fear and common sense, but you know, you get my drift here because fear will regulate and halt the inspiration, being in spirit. Okay, and so um, if we are carrying these fears, and what does that say? In ego death, most people are afraid of death completely. So is there a capacity of going, oh, well, let's get beyond the fear. Let's take a look at this ego and bring it down to size. I mean, really, what are we bringing forward here? It is, let's be a little more accountable for the terminology that we are bringing forward. And I think because when we're talking about death in and of itself, most people are totally paranoid, afraid of it, scared because they don't know what's on the other side, right? Or it's going to be painful. Well, guess what? So when you're speaking about an ego death, and there's nothing dies. So, like, where is when you take logic and reason, even in this human capacity? I'm sorry, they're just not melding. It's not.
If you truly had what people are calling ego death, which is the most ridiculous term I ever had, you would be susceptible to all and every influence out there.
Yep.
You couldn't control yourself. You would blow the wind where it was. Whatever friends you had, okay, let's do. Okay, I don't. Okay, that's fine, and all that good stuff. And the real, we have to be careful with semantics. I call it the big E and the little E, the ego of the personality and the ego of the soul, and they are both components of who we are. But the whole idea of unfoldment is to allow the little e to let the big E in.
Yes, yes. Wait, Diana had some. Our higher.
Her first question was our higher self is astral body, and that's a question. Is our higher self the astral body.
Okay,
No.
no. And then the ego does not fear, gets hurt, must learn, and detachment. Yeah, no, the ego is what feels the pain. Our soul does not. Ego feels everything. If we get insulted for some reason, somebody throws something, it is the ego that has just gotten banned, spammed. However, you would like to consider it, it is the ego that feels the emotional pain. The soul will not. Period.
There's that great story of the Chinaman that was crossing the street, got hit by a car. He wasn't terribly injured, but it hurt. And the guy got out of the car. He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," recognizing that this was a great Buddha type entity, had the monastery dress on and all that. And he said, "I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And the guy that was hit by the car said, "Thank you." And said, "Why? Why are you thanking me?" "Because you have taught me patience and kindness." And let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's what we have to learn. That was true ego. That was the ultimate, the ultimate of what we can be in forgiveness and kindness and lovingness and livingness.
And that was the blending. That was a perfect
Yes.
example of bringing those into perfect harmony.
I'm going to go back to what Lee and I was discussing
Yes.
when we started the show because, as I was pointing out, I think therefore I am Rene Descartes.
Mhm.
I think they misspelled ego. It should have been spelled with an I instead of an E. IGO, ego. Okay, because there is an I in ego because I am ego. Okay, I think, and since I think, everything that evolves around that thinking process is ego. Ego cannot die. Once you're aware that you are ego. Now, when you go back to Freud with what Lee was talking about, id, ego, superego, okay? Even when you're in the stage of id,
Yeah.
you still have ego. You're just not aware,
Right.
okay? So your ego is the essence of who you are. And then when we were talking about going out into the etheric, okay, you're no longer here in the living form, you're now in the spiritual form, okay?
No, that's just the consciousness. But go ahead.
And Lee and I were talking and all that, and it's just like, then it's a we thing. And,
Yeah.
you're part of everything. And I go, and yes, with that we, you still have I, okay? Because you're still part of that thinking
Mhm.
process. As long as you are thinking, you are still ego. The ego cannot die unless you no longer exist.
Yeah.
If you do not exist, then there is no, then yes, the death of an ego would mean your existence ends, period.
And yeah, throw up fear all over the place.
And now let me throw in a little tidbit that I didn't say before. I'm going to go back to the laws of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only change form. Thus, ego being energy cannot be destroyed. So there is no death of an ego.
Yes.
So the whole death of an ego thing is a fallacy. It's just it unless the materialists are correct and we just simply are here on this earth, we live our life and we die and that's it and that's the end and there's nothing else that exists, then yes, the
Well,
death
don't we wish that was so?
Yeah. Well, and again, and maybe it was a great hook, right? Gets people, hooked, like, do this and your life will get so much better. It's like, again, this is where ego in and of itself was the creation of death of an ego. Somebody's ego brought that forward, and instead of really, if that person, whoever it was, literally thought about it for 5 seconds, would recognize, no matter how catchy a catchphrase is, let's hold some integrity behind it. Is the same thing with, it's like, send us your money so we can fight cancer. Why the hell would you ever choose to do that? Eradicate it, eliminate it, um, heal it. Then that bucket that the money's going in doesn't have holes and it doesn't keep leaking through. And it's the same thing with this. because there's so many holes in this that container is not going to hold anything. It's just whether it be sand, whether it be water, whether it be air, it's filled with holes. Um,
It has no bottom. It can't hold anything.
exactly. And this is why it's like, because there's been many people that go in and they're all in on this. I mean, they have gotten this like hook, line, and sinker. And it's like, come on, let's do a little wake up call here for everyone and discuss what it is, what it isn't. And our ego also, I believe, and maybe you could speak a little bit more on it, really does kind of create, in essence, part of our personality self, or influences a little bit. Would you like to?
Yes, I would. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I have two things to mention. So give me time, please.
Oh,
Thank you.
absolutely.
All right. One, one is that as Paul was talking about, and we had a conversation, and he said, I. Yes, each is an individual. However, consciousness at the end, entering what I call the entirety or the wholeness or the one, whichever word you wish to use. We go there as a group consciousness.
Correct.
However, as an individual, we go as awareness.
Yep.
Big difference.
Big
Difference. You still have all those memories, all the components of 1,000 lives, or however many it may have been, and you still have that. But guess what? It is now constructed in beauty, and kindness, and lovingness, and information that can be distilled into wisdom. Once you have wisdom, you can move so far down the road, so freaking far. The description of wisdom, I know,
No, you're good.
Okay, is knowledge is force, wisdom is energy. And if you can figure that one out, welcome to it. But and the other thing was the smaller ego, little e, as I call it. I don't think we could have survived without some sensibility about self, without recognizing, yes, there are other people out there, but I'm the one who's hungry. I'm the one that's being beaten. I'm the one that's surviving, if I may use that term. Stop.
Yeah.
And okay, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, finish.
Oh, I thought you wanted to say something.
Well, I do real quick, because when you were speaking about that part of that ego and that part where we have the personality, the small e for ego, that is a part of a recognition, the micro of the macro of the I am.
There you go.
And
Yay.
it's like, and again, you got to have the two blendings, and we do have that part of that personality where, like, I'm not little, I'm big. When you're a kid, I'm all powerful. I can climb this tree. All of these little mechanisms that you watch children playing in the sandbox, who's getting along, who isn't, all these little critters of I ams, teeny tinies, there's a process, and they're all searching for that larger part of ego, that part of I am. Whatever follows I am creates that divinity. And so when Lee's speaking about the big E, the ego, the I am, and then the little part of that ego is all those little components of the personality. And again, it's that blending. Our personality also is a part of this physical capacity, right? Those personality traits, like, oh, I'm beautiful, my hair looks so great today. Oh, I got the biggest boobs, I got the smallest little waist, I got the big broad shoulders. Whatever those capacities that our little ego tells us about who we are, we bring it into that personality and we build from there. This is where we get our humanity, our humility, our empathy, all of, or even just what, like,
Individuality.
and that individuality. And this is where, when we're looking here, and then we talk about mass consciousness, that I am is a part of the mass consciousness. That is a part in the etheric. It's like there's no difference of me sitting here. I'm in the etheric. My consciousness is now in the etheric.
If
What
I
did
may,
I walk through a door?
if I may give an example of that, a personal example. When I was in an orphanage, 6, 7, 8 years, I don't know how old I was, and I was put in a closet because of something that I did not do, but I said I did in order to protect a friend. And in that closet, I peed my pants. I knew I'd be in trouble for that. Okay, so there was fear there of how I would be punished.
Mm-hmm.
But inside, there was something deeper than that. It just simply said, be calm. It's okay. And I think that's what's important that in all our movement through the unfoldment of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
into that beautiful lotus blossom. You can float on water, that can fly in the skies,
Mm-hmm.
that can live so beautifully. And I wish we all could do that.
That unfoldment.
That unfoldment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that unfoldment is a part of our process, our evolution. And so the evolution is the first primary steps, primary steps into that unfoldment of our own I am. And so this is where, when we're looking at that, mm, the ego, what does the ego mean to you? What were those things that you always told yourself? Oh, I'm a great artist, or I'm a terrible artist. Um, all those things that we gave credence for, good, bad, or indifferent. Okay, a higher vibrational energy, a neutral energy, neutrality, or that of the lower. And I've just given two different ways to expand upon the exact same thing. Go ahead.
So there may be that aspect of self indulgence,
Yep.
self judgment, of which a lot of us are accused of. We're so hard on ourselves
Selves.
more than any
Mhm.
outside force could
Yep.
be.
Yep.
That, oh, I feel guilty about this, I feel sad about that, I wish I would have and could have, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have those thoughts,
Mhm.
but they needn't control us. They needn't bring us into a point of despair and discordance.
So if we were going to take a look for just a moment and um, look at working with our ego, I think some of the greatest flags that we can recognize when ego is really playing a triggering role is when our emotional aspects get triggered, such as feeling hurt or angry, or
Mhm.
that frustrated by someone or something else, frustrating our attempts, or feeling insulted. That really is a triggering of the ego. If you're feeling that, stop, take a few breaths. Like Lee would say, count to three. I count to 10. It takes me a couple more minutes to figure it out, but take a moment. And then again, we can take, Paul talks about it all the time. That thought process, the thinking, the reasoning, the logic that goes behind it, the deducive, like, well, so and so said this. Is it really worth my time and energy to be upset? And how long would I choose to be here? Again, we have a choice over this, and it's usually ego. Well, so and so said this, or so and so was lying, or this or that, and we play all these manipulative games um, in order to control our environment. But yet, our environment is always controlled right here.
We just simply have to keep in remembrance, that if we are running our lives according to outside sources
Yes.
rather than inside intuition,
Mhm.
then we're in danger of non existence. Because you can't exhibit expression of yourself if what you're expressing is, oh, I wore the wrong dress, or I wore the wrong suit
Mhm.
to this particular
Anger,
event.
frustrated.
Okay, any of those
Yeah.
emotions. Again, it goes right back to the emotional spectrum. It always does.
Yep.
Until we can put ourselves on the mental plane primarily,
Yep.
and we learn to control the emotional aspect so far as an energy
Mhm.
to move us forward, as opposed to hindering us and limiting us.
No, well, no, because you made a mention, and I think would be a really good point is the between the two, between the lower mental
Mhm.
and the higher mental, because that lower mental is still a screwed with
Yeah.
it's like those
Again,
filters
the
were not clear.
lower mental is the one that's most susceptible to mass consciousness.
Yes, yes,
The higher mental is so high up there that, see,
Yeah.
not very many people on this earth plane have ever reached that level.
It-
This,
it-
this is
However,
where
however, you can still use the lower mental as analytical,
Yep.
logical, sensible.
Mhm.
That's what it's for.
the lower mental is still triggered through the emotional components.
It is. That's why you learn to control the emotional aspect.
Yes. So this is where, when you're looking at stoicism,
yes,
stoicism is working within the bandwidth of the lower mental. When we step in and we recognize, and again, through working with this, you can broach it and step forward after, when you start mastering these things and recognizing in every single thing that you do, you're bringing forward kindness, compassion, love. You're stepping into, can you guys see that? The flow. Oh my. Lee bought me one of these the other day, and I enjoyed it so much. I was like, oh, I got to show that. I thought it was cool. I do the flow. And, but yeah, it's when we get to be able to, let's just say, um, step into our own governance, the governance of self, then we step into that higher realm of the higher mental, where we really do see so much more clearly, and therefore that part of our ego is not triggered like that. It's still that lower mental aspect is where our egos are still getting triggered. And so it's like when we speak about the death of an ego, I'm sorry, it just doesn't,
There's a wavelength when
Yeah.
we talk about flow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
There are many wavelengths out there, and according to your emotional con, according to your intelligence, according to many factors that create you as an individual, is which of those energy patterns you enter or choose to do so. The flow is that balanced energy that exists everywhere that very few people are able to enter. They get frustrated, they get angry, they become curse, and all these things that we do when we're um, disemboweled.
yeah. Paul, you got, yeah,
revolutionary thinking says it's good to not have your ego triggered. And here's the thing about ego, and this is where stoicism is very important, okay? Because if you don't have control of your emotions, it's very easy to be triggered, okay? The more in control of your emotions that you are, the less the outside things will have an effect on you, because the energy, it's let me see here. Let me put it this way. If you can't control something, why waste the energy trying
yes,
to control it? Okay.
yes.
If you don't have the money to pay something, why waste the energy in trying to pay something you can't? Why not just make a phone call and just say, I can't? And obviously, there might be consequences to this action, but you only deal with what you can deal with at that point in time. If you have the ability to have an effect on something, that's when you deal with it. If you don't waste your energy on it. Go to something else more prevalent. And this is where you reel in your emotions.
Yeah.
Something can be very upsetting At that point in time, you need to maintain your composure and get through with the situation. Now, that night, if you want to go home and cry and let it all out, there's a time and a place for it because
Yeah.
you need to release that. Okay.
Yes.
You can't just continue to hold it in. You have to get out there. You get it out there and get it out of you and bring in some good energy and feel good about yourself.
Mhm.
So the things that are within your power handle, and those that aren't, just set it
But
back. And that
yeah.
goes with stoicism.
Yes.
If you can control your emotions, if somebody sits there and calls you a name or says something that you have a strong feeling about,
Hmm.
instead of allowing yourself to just go, but rah, 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 sit back, think about it for a second,
Hmm.
ask yourself, is there anything I can do about the way this person is presenting this? Does it affect me in any way? Is there anything that I can do at this point in time? And if
Yeah.
there's not,
Yeah.
then you just let it blow off of you.
Yeah. Paul, there are a couple of critical things here that I'd really like to make a mention of.
Mm-hmm.
And, when we're talking about the ego, we're talking about shadow work. Shadow
Yes.
work comes down to working and loving that little ego from childhood or teenage years or whatever, however it served us in a survival mode. When we're looking at detachment, um, there's so many different components in many different fractional ways. Um, Sometimes things from, whether it be from mass consciousness, it could be from news, it could be something someone's heard, it can be upsetting, it could be sometimes life threatening, it could be where it stimulates some, let's just say, some hot buttons that are stored within our chakras. um, it just, we can take a look at how long do you really choose to be there. um, Again, it's stopping for a moment, stopping that loop to loop, and we've spoken about this on different segments of the flow. Um, in stopping that and having a breath of fresh air, whether you can just stop something, take a walk in nature, perhaps for 5 minutes, sit and hug a tree, sit behind, smell a rose. There are so many different things that can stop that thought process. And when we're in it, when we're in that muck and mire, and the ups and the downs, and again, this is like the ebb, okay? um
And
reckon
there's a difference between ebb and flow.
Absolutely. And so when we're having the ups and the downs of the ocean here, recognize we're still a flotation device. You might get bounced from thither, from here to there and everything else, but guess what? Your head's still above water. And so if we can step forward, we speak about loving and bringing love and compassion and kindness. Many times people can do it for other people, but they cannot do it for themselves. And it's a reminder, just like when I started this little offshoot of that shadow work, like, oh, I've gotten rid of everything, I'm done, I'm good to go. Well, when more awareness comes, when that unfoldment starts happening, other stuff starts bubbling up in order to be clear. It's clearing our sieve. We clear the sieve from above, and we also have to clear our own sieve. We are the sieve. We are the collector of everything. Our physical, mental, emotional bodies do this. And so, if we can get to the point where sometimes, though, it's the gentle terms that we use for ourselves and tell ourselves. We had started before. What do we tell ourselves when we're kids? I'm the greatest. I'm the best. I can do this. I can do it better than you. My dad's bigger. My dad can beat your dad up. All these stupid little things we told ourselves as children. If we're having a rough spot, sometimes that is that survival mechanism where we can, for that briefest of moments, and say, you know what? No, I'm honoring myself. I'm shutting the outside world out for just a moment, and I'm honoring myself. And I bring forward that beautiful peace, enlightenment, and love. And guess where that comes from? Oh my. Hmm.
I got a perfect example right now. Okay. My good friend Ariel, I'm having him on my show tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Scheduled for 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Okay. Something has come up in Ariel's life to where we have to delay the show by an hour. Now, if ego was an issue, okay, if ego was an issue, it'd be like, well, Ariel, it's my show. You're going to be here at 1 o'clock no matter what because it's my show. Now, that's ego out of
That's
control.
ego.
Okay. Now, I'm not like that. All right. Everybody that I work with, I let them know that life happens. Things happen in life. You can't control some things. So,
Flow.
when I interview Ariel, it will be at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2
Ah,
p.m. Pacific. Okay. And it's not a big deal because
right.
I don't let life interfere with me.
Yeah.
Okay. Things happen, things come up, and I make the adjustments. Because if people would just learn to work with people in a better way, to show that compassion, that love, that
Mhm.
that feeling of coexistence, of spiritualness, people would understand that things happen in life that sometimes we can't control, and we have to be understanding of
Yep.
that, and
Mhm.
we have to work with that.
Mhm.
This is something that's out of his control and out of my control, so we're working with it. So again, keep your ego in check. Don't let the emotion, and this is what Lee and I was talking about before the show, where the ego is the emotional aspect of us.
Yes.
Okay. It's very, very emotional. And if we allow that emotion to get out of control, then we now have this superiority aspect that
Mhm.
we shouldn't be having. Where
Exactly.
we can see a lot of that going on in the world today, people thinking that they're superior than others. They have ego problems.
Well, it's the same thing when you're always trying to play that injured person, right? So and so done me wrong, all the thing. Well, or it's like life isn't fair. Well, that wasn't fair. You're right. Life, I'm sorry. My grandmother always used to say, God never promised you a rose garden. You can get roses, but he never promised you the entire rose garden. You're going to feel these little pains here and there. So when people say, oh, somebody isn't being fair, under whose whose ego and whose judgment call is fairness being recognized? Is it the person's will being willful? Well, that person here, that is an entire capacity of ego driven super narcissism in every single component that you could possibly imagine. It's like that person, as far as an emotional, um, mm, how can I say this? Um, that emotional component is like a huge driving force with destruction and despair. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what it is. There's times where when we're looking at detachment in any capacity, it's like, okay, so big deal. Somebody wasn't being fair. Again, you're the one that qualifies that fairness. And so if someone's not being fair, yeah,
Doesn't
and
matter, number one.
yeah, exactly. Like,
Well,
yeah,
yes, he
and
does.
are
I'm
you
going to
out of
go beat
toilet
him up.
paper? Are you out of toilet paper? Because really, that's what you had. Really, that's what it would be. Never mind.
One of my major commands to myself that I presented long ago uh, is you have to look at the essence. Is this essential
Yeah.
to my well being?
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Is it necessary to respond in anger and viciousness and corrupted thought?
Yep.
Or will that just create something that shouldn't be? It should create a shadow that's going to follow you the rest of your
Yep.
life.
Eat.
Okay? Give me a minute,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, yeah.
Okay? There was a time I had a gun to my head, and a guy was definitely going to kill me. I detached. Now, detachment does not mean that you don't help other people. It simply means you're not getting involved in the situation at hand, theirs or yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it means. Stepping back and giving that essential essence time to resolve itself. All right? So the guy said, I'm going to blow your brains out. I says, well, I'd rather you wouldn't because I have so many brains, so few brains that it wouldn't make much of a mess.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he laughed and he left. Yeah, I don't know why that was. I have no memory of what happened after that. But anyhow, I didn't get shot. I got holes in my head, but not from a bullet.
Well,
All right.
and ego also blames. Ego also blames because ego, for the most part, will shy away from taking accountability and responsibility. It's kind of like that component thereof. So if you're recognizing and you're putting off, like I tease Lee, I'll say, "What did you do with my cup?" Okay, it's like this is my cup. I'm drinking from it, but what did you do with it? Now I could have left it anywhere, but so when we take a look, is that ego because the ego is trying to, in that capacity, like who'd like to take responsibility for that? It's so much easier to blame somebody else, and I can get on with my day. I can dump that shit right down somebody else's windpipe instead of being and saying, "Wait a minute, no, I did. I left that. I left that cup out on the back table."
I think we have to also realize that there's a pretense
Yeah.
that we bring about as we walk through life. They're called masks.
Oh yeah.
They're called facades.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of names for this thing that is so prevalent. That who is who,
Yeah.
and why are they who they are, or why are they pretending to be who they're not? Okay, and all of that is about acceptance. That is all about the desire to be recognized in a society.
Yep.
Now, it may be incorrect. Oh, this guy's a millionaire, I'm not, and I got ragged clothes. How can I go to the party? Shit. I would dress up in the ragged clothes I got and go down.
Oh, you go down in a toga. He'd go in a toga, you know. A bath towel, hey, a fig leaf even.
So it goes back to what's essential. You know, is it essential that my life be saved with the guy with the gun to my head? I didn't think so. It was unnecessary. You know, what good do I have? What do I have to offer?
Mhm.
So why am I even here? So I don't care. Go ahead.
I think sometimes when we're looking at when life is giving us these little heals or these little challenges, all it is an opportunity for you to walk through the door. It's another opportunity for you to gain your own strength. It's another step, another one in the ladder. And if we can hold in the back of our heads, back of our thoughts, like Lee Tuhawk said, essence. What essence are you bringing forward at this moment in time? Is these feelings of frustration and anger and despair or whatever
Is that essential?
is that essential?
Yeah.
And so if it's essential for you in that moment, it's something you've got to work with. That's a process. Hey, go for it, man. You know, I mean, hey, I'm 16. My birthday's tomorrow, so it's like, you know, it's my 16th birthday, and I'll cry if I like to. So recognize that sometimes these things will trigger the emotions to come up so that we can clear them. But there is a difference, and we all know it. We can all sense it. Like, am I just playing with this? Is this like, oh, I'm kind of stepping back into this comfort zone again because I recognize and I remember this comfort zone very, very well. And it's like, as we raise our vibration, as we choose our thoughts and choose our to be accountable for what we're bringing forward, let me ask the question: what essence are you choosing to bring forward? If you're choosing to bring forward love, compassion, and kindness for everyone else, then why not do it for yourself? Be loving and compassionate and show the kindness for you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we have to recall that uh, you talked too much. I lost my memory.
Yeah, see, it's my fault. I was talking, he lost it. Yep, it's my fault.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that one on because there could have been a run of truth in that.
Well, doesn't matter. Actually, it's non-essential.
Exactly.
It's non-essential. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
So,
Yeah.
what essence would you like to bring forward? Go ahead. You
Yes,
got the mic.
What about Charles?
Well, you can do Lucy.
There we
Lucy.
go. Yeah.
Oh, Lucy.
Yeah, wait.
No.
Say goodbye. What's the name? Say goodbye, Gracie. Oh,
Say
goodbye,
goodbye,
Gracie.
Gracie.
Yeah. Okay. There we are.
I was making a reference to Lucy, the movie Lucy.
Yeah. Oh, that movie.
That
That
what I was
movie.
trying to
Oh,
see.
my
See, he
gosh.
totally forgot. It's his fault.
Yeah.
He did not pick up
That's
on
right.
my cue.
That's right. Yeah.
See, it's his fault.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Okay.
So what were we going to talk about, Lucy?
Well, just remember an essence of ego. For every minute that you're angry, you're sad, you're frustrated, you're wasting 60 seconds that you could be happy or loving or caring.
And here's another thing. If we allow, like say we may not be in the best of moods, so on and so forth, and we're struggling and say we have to be somewhere, we have some appointment, we have a class to do or something. And it's one of those things like you're dragging your feet, like there's no freaking way I'd like to do this. Do you know that if you make that choice and you say, I'm going regardless, no matter what, I really don't feel like it. Do you know that's usually when some of the greatest teachings to yourself come? Simply because you had that feeling, that little ego self is going, no, stay here. It's better to be miserable and stay in this little comfort zone. But the moment you do, guess what? Oh, is that unfoldment? Perhaps. And so those are the things when we're looking at that essence of ourselves, of that ego. We can be very, very ego driven. The point being is that we can use the ego as a vehicle instead of it driving us. We can drive it.
Exactly.
If we can recall that ego is the essential essence of the physical form, the little e, not the big e.
Yep.
Okay. In that, you can format it any way you desire. Oh, I've had all these experiences and I can't help myself. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm addicted to drugs, whatever.
Mhm.
I like to drink. I drink too much sometimes. And I put it on PTSD because I'm a veteran. However, that's not accurate because there's a lot of whole intermixed things in that little ego
Yep.
that compound themselves to drive me in a place I don't wish to be. But that's a format of mine, and I can change that format.
And so that little ego, the little one, the one will be the one that tells us all the things like, no, don't do that. You don't feel like doing that. No. We're just gonna. They what is it? Kind of try to validate these things. If you do this, this will happen. But when we take a look and we sit and we kind of release or detach from that little me, okay, like I like that one as another reference. It's a little me. That would be the little ego, because the larger component of us that is really like all knowing, okay, that is where that part of our I am, okay, our I am presence, that is filled and complete with that sacred part of our ego, that doesn't feel that pain and misery and everything else. So when we allow that little mini me to rule our lives, that's when we have all the discord. That's when we have the disruptions. Put your arms around that little mini me. Give a hug. Hug him. Hug her. Thank them for doing what they have to do. But guess what? These directions that you're being given, like don't go to this class, don't do this, sit here and suffer for a while longer. Um, we can tell it to stop. Be silent before this being of light, and that ego will settle. Our mind that's always overarching, overreaching, overactive can calm down so that we can hear from above. So it's the understanding and the inner standing. And then,
Well, this is horrible because he was just saying what I was thinking. So we do that sometimes. We trade thoughts. Um,
I was just reading his mind.
and it's important to realize that we are a superior being,
Yeah.
that we don't have to fall into the trap of our suffering, of our trauma, of our experiences that perhaps have created discord or demeaning us in some way. We don't have to allow people to hurt us, to damage us. We don't have to allow that at all.
Mhm.
If you can, you walk away. If you can't, then you endure with detachment.
hmm So, as a closing remark, because I know we're going to be closing down here in a moment, if we can think about this for just a moment, pain and suffering is optional. Now, I can be a little idiot and go, yeah, yeah, no, this pain and suffering is optional. And technically it is. And why? Because I've taken a look at it. I've lived it in my life. And I've decided that pain for me isn't optional. I don't care to experience it. But to make a reference point and say that as a blanket cover for everybody, it may not work simply because people enjoy pain and suffering. People really do get off on it sometimes.
Well, sometimes that's all they know.
That's all they know. And so, again, most people will stay in a known hell than to step into an unknown heaven. But if you consider for just a moment those words, pain and suffering are optional because we get to choose. We get to choose the level of pain that we choose to experience. It could be zero or it could be 100. You choose. You got 100 increments to choose from. Go for it. But in my own life, pain and suffering is an optional. And I will say this because in the last, maybe a week or so, um, I've probably been exerting myself a little more than I am used to. And
There's a word begins with a B.
so my back, my back was out in pain a little bit, right? And kind of limping around and stuff. I mean, I still feel some of the effects. And so it was like, okay, so I had to take some time. All right, I'm going to lay down. I'm going to do what I got to do, um, and care for this. But I also had to tell myself, yeah, no, I recognize it. Thank you. Pain signals. Thank you very much. I recognize it. And now that it's been brought to my attention, I'm feeling it. I'm cognizant of it. Well, guess what? Now I have a starting point. Now there is no more. So just like we can tell our mind, just like we can tell our little egos to be silent before this being of light, I can turn those pain signals off the same way. Be silent before this being of light. Therefore, those pain signals are now, that little light switch gets kind of dimmed down a little
Just
bit.
visualize your light itself in
Yep.
front of you or within you.
Yep. So when we're upset, when we're angry, when we're frustrated, when we're working on stuff, guess what? We're just dimming it. It's like, I believe, what do you do? Christ said, even you, what do? You put a candle or a lantern underneath the table, or do you put it on top of the table so it illuminates all? So when we're feeling these um, uh, things that bind us down,
Yeah, 6 seconds.
6 seconds, well, bind us down, then we're just diminishing our light. So again, we're going back to essence. Ego. Little ego or big ego? Okay, I'm done.
1,000, 1,000, 1,000. All right.
Guys, come join us. We're gonna have Journey Within. You know, come join us on Twitter and whatever.
All right.
And
Great
thank you everybody
show.
for listening. Yes.
Yes, great show. Thank you for being here. I enjoy it every time. Remember, everyone, be kind, be happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.